Today I want to present you a nice little vintage watch from the brand Omega in Switzerland, an Omega Geneve. I cannot exactly say in which year this one was produced, but it seems to me that it must have been in the year 1968, 69 around. At least it was earlier than 1970 and later than 1965. So I suppose 60, 66, 67, 68 or 69, something around that. It is the older shape, but it seems to be the end of the 60s because it has already this edgy shape in the side, whereas the watches around 66, 65, the Geneve watches with that caliber are mostly more round from the side view. And also it has the Omega sign applied on the dial and not painted on the dial, not printed on the dial. So this is also a sign for the production in the 60s and not in the 70s. Now this watch is gold plated on the surface. Normally the gold plate of Omega is not a bad one. It's mostly 20 micron. So this seems also to be 20 micron, and you see the condition of the gold plate is very good. There is not whatsoever places in the case where the gold is gone. So overall the condition is beautiful. It looks like a massive gold watch, but yeah, indeed it is gold plated, but you don't see that from the upper side. You see it always in the base, which is stainless steel. The caliber of that watch is the 601 Handwind caliber. The 601 caliber I love very much. It is a red gold plated caliber, which is quite uncomplicated and a very much a standard caliber, a standard movement for Omega watches in that time. I like it. I'm not a fan of the old automatic calibers, where even if they are good quality, but in the vintage watch I was not so lucky in the past with automatic calibers. They are more complicated to restore and to review, whereas the handwind calibers are easier to make. So I really prefer them. So if I buy an old Omega, I always look that I get the caliber 601 or the successor of that caliber in the 70s. I forgot the number of that. The crown seems to be original. It's a nice little crown, and the watch has a size of 25 millimeter in the width without the crown, and the length of the watch is 31 millimeter from here to here. So let's wind it. Now I gave the watch a good wind. It works immediately. It does not lose much time. It also does not win too much time. It is a little bit going after, but not too much. So I would say it's a wearable watch, but I don't like so much the missing waterproofness. This watch is of course not at all waterproof, and I think there are no casks in it. So before you use a watch like this in the everyday life, going to the rain or in the humidity, especially in humid areas, in humid countries, then you should have a review on the watch in the watchmakers, in the watch repair, and check to renew the casks of the watch. This watch is worn on leather band, so the leather strap here is a brown leather strap. I really like much for that golden watch. Normally I prefer the black leather straps, but with that gold-plated watch, it's okay. You see the gold plate is really beautiful, beautiful shape. To be honest, for me, this watch is too small. I have no problem with small watches, and most vintage watches are smaller than modern watches, so I have no problem with a watch 36 millimeter or 35 millimeter, even 34 millimeter, but 25 millimeter, this is for me more a lady's size. I don't want to open that watch because the base of that watch is not that easy to open, and I don't want to make scratches in it. Because the condition is so nice. But it is the normal and very frequently used caliber 601, which is a beautiful caliber. You can see that the dial is really perfect. The dial is totally clear, a wonderful clean dial, like new, with that glance. So also the hands are in good condition. There is no corrosion. The index has no corrosion. So this watch, in my opinion, never saw humidity inside. So this is a strange trend nowadays that these watches should have patina. To be honest, I'm not a fan of these patina watches. So you can very often find very bad condition Omega, especially Omega watches, which because the prices are so high nowadays, and you find a lot of Omega watches with the so-called patina, but in fact these are just dirty, bad condition watches, and the seller calls it patina to make it more interesting. If there is this sort of patina, I rather would keep it like this and not clean it or refurbish it, because if you redial the watch, it is not a good authentic condition. But basically I'm not a fan of these dirty dials. And the real patina actually is not just dirty. This is a dirty watch, a dirty dial. If you talk about patina, about the beautiful patina, then it is this change of color in the dial which comes from the sun, give it a brownish or orange glance and make it darker, or give it a certain pattern of color change in the dial. But it is not just dirt or rust. So dirt and rust is not patina. And so I would never buy a watch like that. But unfortunately, you'll find a lot of these watches nowadays in the eBay, which are just not well cared or had a lot of humidity and have rust and dirt on the dial, and then it's called patina. That is the watch on my arm. That's how it looks. So I think the strap is 16 millimeter wide, and well, it does not look that bad. It is a vintage watch. Vintage watches generally were small, but I must admit that, yeah, this one is, even for me, a little bit too small. Some would say, as my ankle is very small and not wide, some would say, oh, it's fitting to you. You can wear it. Of course, I can wear it, but I prefer watches at least with 35 millimeter. So this is really a rather too small for my taste. Yeah, but it's okay. I think I will. Maybe I sometimes wear it. I'm not a fan of gold-plated watches, so this brings me to some hints how to buy how to buy a vintage Omega. I'm not a fan of the gold-plated, because in many cases the gold-plate watches are not in good condition. The gold is away from the watch already, and you see the brass under it or the steel under it. So this is not nice, and then you cannot really make it nice looking again without bringing a new gold plate layer on it, and then it's not original anymore. So also you cannot polish a gold-plated watch because the polishing would take away the gold plate. So if I buy a vintage watch, mostly I buy a massive gold watch, or rather, as I'm not a fan of gold watches, the steel version. You can, if you want to polish it, even if I'm never polishing watches. I never let them polished. I like them in the natural form, in the sharp form, because if you polish too much, then the shape is getting too round. I cannot stand that. This is not really my taste. So this is one thing. Second, Omegas are nowadays very complicated to buy. First of all, the prices are so high nowadays. If you want to buy a nice classic Omega from the 60s with the applicated Omega sign, which is an application on the dial, then it is very seldom that you can buy it for under 400 or 450 euro, and then the situation and the status of that watch is maybe doubtful. You cannot know what you have to invest then. So most of these watches nowadays are offered in eBay for around 500 to even 800 euro, and then we come up and up and up to the sky. So I don't know. I stopped to look for vintage Omegas. I used to have several vintage Omegas. Even I had the Paipan Constellation, but I sold all of these vintage Omegas some years ago, which was a big mistake because I sold them for the situation nowadays much too cheap, and now I don't want to buy them back because I don't want to pay more than 500 600 euro for a vintage watch, and then it must be really an excellent exemplar. I don't want to buy ruins where I cannot know how much I must invest later. So what I do now is not buying Omegas anymore, because there is also a lot of Omega watches in the market which are not authentic, which are put together. So if you buy Omega, then only buy it if you see the movement, if you see the base, if you see the basement from inside, if you see everything and all in high definition pictures. Then compare the reference in the basement inside in Google, and look whether that reference is fitting to that movement, is fitting to that look, to that view. 2 weeks ago, I saw a basically quite nice looking Omega Geneve in steel, and there was a photo of the basement from inside, and I compared the reference number inside the base, and what can I say? I found out that that is a gold-plated reference, the reference for a gold-plated Geneve. The shape was okay, but it was a gold-plated one. But the watch was not gold-plated. So, or this base is not fitting to that watch, is a base from another watch, or something happened to the watch before. And so I asked the seller, why is the basement saying here this is a gold-plated watch and you sell a steel watch? And he answered me that most likely the gold plate in that watch, the gold color is disappeared with the years. So someone maybe scrubbed it all away and then polished it again, and then you have a steel watch. This is not an authentic status of the watch. It's not an authentic situation of the watch. I would never buy a watch like that. So buying an Omega is a question of luck. If you get a good one, and if you get a good one, mostly the sellers know what they sell here, because the market gives that price, and that does not mean that these watches are in a better value for money than other watches. I would say the Omegas nowadays, for my taste, they are too expensive. So what I do in the moment is I more focus on classic Seikos from that time, 60s, early 70s. Here they are also already higher priced nowadays than some years before, because especially in Europe, the collection of the Seiko vintages just starts. In Asia, it was on US was already more popular, but here it just starts. But I can find really high quality watches which are not at all worse than these Omega watches for half or 1/3 less of the price. So you get a King Seiko chronometer for 500-600 euro in excellent condition. And if you want to buy a chronometer, Constellation chronometer from Omega for that price, you will not find that in a reasonable condition. So with that picture from this beautiful gold watch, which the more I look at it, the more I must say, maybe I will go on wearing that. Yeah, I say bye-bye to you for this presentation.